In my previous life, just a month before getting engaged to my childhood friend, another female friend of ours cornered him at his doorstep. She cried, confessing that she had loved him all these years and begged him to give her a chance. He refused, and later we got married without any issues. But she never gave up, until the candle had burned out. That pesky mosquito finally left its mark on the man. She came excitedly to declare her dominance while pregnant, and in the struggle, she pushed me down the stairs, leaving me with a head wound, bleeding profusely. In my daze, I saw him and his mother rush over, holding her, anxiously asking if the baby was hurt. The next moment I opened my eyes. I was back in high school, staring at the boy and girl in front of me. This time, everything will be different. Chapter 1. When I opened my eyes, I was in the classroom. I was wearing my high school summer uniform, and the gentle hum of cicadas mixed with cheers from outside the window. My head felt heavy. I sat up straight, dazed at everything before me. The last thing I remembered was taking a drafted divorce agreement from the law office and returning home, only to find Anna standing at my door, visibly pregnant, like a peacock finally winning a fight. She lifted her head to boast. "I'm pregnant. David said he's going to divorce you." I stayed silent, brushed past her, and took out my key to open the door. Perhaps my indifferent attitude fell short of glorifying her triumph. She suddenly became agitated, grabbing me tightly and refusing to let go. In the scuffle, she suddenly pushed hard, and in my high heels, I lost my balance and fell down the stairs. My head hit the ground. The warmth of the blood and the sharp pain were my last sensations. Chapter 2. Amid hurried footsteps, a bottle of water was placed on my desk. "I heard you got heat stroke? You only attended half of gym class. What happened?" I looked up to see a familiar, slightly worried face. It was David, a much younger David, my childhood friend, my husband, Anna's baby's father, David. I stared blankly at him, recalling the time after I fell down the stairs, when he rushed over and chose to comfort Anna first. He reassured her, telling her not to worry, that the baby would be fine. "Willow?" Not getting a response, David waved his hand in front of my face. "You okay?" Suddenly, I felt ridiculous. Things had come to this, and yet I was still having such dreams. Was I really so pitiful, longing for his care even in my subconscious? I let out a cold laugh. David froze for a second, and at that moment, another familiar exaggerated voice called from the classroom door. "Willow, are you okay?" Anna rushed in, her face full of concern. "I heard you almost fainted from heat stroke." I was so worried. Even though she said she was worried about me, her body moved closer to David, subtly rubbing his sleeve. Why didn't I see it before? I mumbled, "What?" Both of them were taken aback. Such a fool. I shook my head and laughed. I treated Anna as my closest friend, sharing secrets about David, bringing her into our study group, tutoring her, helping her move from the bottom of the class to the top 100. Even after David and I started dating, we often brought her along because she said she missed us. She even called herself the third wheel friend named Steven. I introduced her to several boyfriends, all great guys, but she always said they weren't right. How did I not realize sooner? Even before she became friends with me, she had liked David. Just before David and I got engaged, she stood in the rain, crying, blocking his way, asking for a fair chance to compete for his love. She claimed she never wanted to ruin our friendship but said she just couldn't control herself because she loved him so much. Back then, David didn't accept her. He firmly chose to get engaged and marry me. But for 5 years after our wedding, Anna remained a third party in our marriage. After the pretense was shattered, she threw caution to the wind, showing up at David's office, bringing him lunch, buying him clothes, and showering him with affection. She said she'd prove with her actions that she loved David more than I ever could. David hated her pestering. He blocked her number, refused to see her, and returned or threw away everything she sent. Half a year later, Anna came to me crying, kneeling, and begging for forgiveness, claiming she was out of her mind before and that she'd leave David alone. She wanted to be friends with us again. Of course, I wasn't saintly enough to befriend someone who had tried to ruin my marriage. and David said he wouldn't either. Yet, with the pressure of everyday married life and the stress of trying to have a child, every tiny crack in our relationship became a doorway for Anna to infiltrate and influence us. David started mentioning her more and more, even reminiscing about her during our arguments. He'd talk about Anna's thoughtfulness when the food I cooked didn't suit his taste, or about her culinary skills, which she had improved just for him. Eventually, those tiny cracks, which could have been repaired, widened with her presence. During our silent battles, he'd stay out all night. I couldn't stand the betrayal and filed for divorce, but he tearfully refused, apologizing over and over. He said he loved me, but I knew he couldn't let Anna go. He was drawn to her obedience, her compromises, her softness, and her constant attention. So I went to a lawyer alone and drafted the divorce papers. I wanted to escape this painful entanglement and had planned everything for after the divorce, to move to another city, to start over. But in the end, Anna pushed me down, forcing me to witness that disgusting scene. Chapter 3. The class bell rang soon enough. All afternoon, I stared at the familiar yet strange scribbles on the blackboard, watched the teachers come and go from the podium, and finally realized one thing. This isn't a dream. I've been reborn. Perhaps heaven had pity on my poor judgment in the last life. And now I found myself back in my junior year of high school, just when my friendship with Anna had begun. Anna was a transfer student. She hadn't scored high enough in her high school entrance exam to get into our school and had spent a year in a third-rate high school before her family paid for her transfer here. She wasn't good academically and often ended up at the bottom of the class, hiding in the bathroom to cry after exams. High school is like a microcosm of society. Girls who struggle with their studies are often easy targets for bullying. It wasn't long before people started making fun of her, locking the bathroom door when she went to cry, pouring water over her head, calling her a crybaby. I was the one who saved her. I chased away the girls who bullied her and gave her my spare clothes. She cried and thanked me, and seeing her pitiful state, I was afraid she'd be bullied again. So I took the initiative to be her friend. I was the student council president, and I had a certain level of respect in the class and the school. My care for her also made the other classmates treat her better. And because of me, David often looked after her too. Growing up, my kind parents always told me that giving roses to others leaves a lingering fragrance on your hands. I kept those words in mind, always trying to help everyone around me. Later, when Anna timidly said she wanted to improve her grades, I brought her into the study group with David and me, helping her to improve her grades enough to get into a decent local university. But David didn't do well in the college entrance exams. To stay with him, I gave up on my dream school and applied to a local prestigious university instead. During senior year, our college offered an opportunity for graduate study exchange abroad. And once again, I stayed behind for David. Looking back now, I must have been such a fool to make those choices. Thankfully, this time, everything is just beginning, and there's still time to change. Before long, the class bell rang again. David and Anna both approached me, and Anna excitedly said, "Are we reviewing English together in the study group today?" I stood up and picked up my bag. "I'm going home." Chapter 4. Why are you suddenly going home? There are still 2 evening classes left. Anna widened her eyes. "Are you still feeling unwell from the heat stroke this afternoon?" David reached out. "Don't tell me you really have a fever." I turned my head, avoiding his hand. He paused, his hand hanging awkwardly in midair. "I'm a bit tired. I already asked the teacher for leave." "Then I'll take you home," David said. "Wait for me. I'll let the teacher know." "No need." I picked up my bag, turned around, and left the classroom without waiting for him. When I reached the apartment building, I happened to run into Mrs. Wang, who was taking out the trash. When she saw me, Mrs. Wang immediately smiled warmly. "Oh, Willow, why are you back so early today? Come to Auntie's for some fresh sesame pastries later, they're still warm." I looked at the woman in front of me. Once, I thought I'd found the best mother-in-law in the world. But after David and I were married, and we still didn't have a child, I lost count of how many dirty looks she gave me. It was even her who pushed David to try with someone else. "She has health problems. You can't waste your life with her." When I lay at the bottom of the stairs, blood pouring from my head. She and David rushed over, and neither spared me a glance. All they cared about was Anna's unborn child. "Thank you, Auntie," I said as I walked past her, "but I don't like sesame pastries." Chapter 5. Under Mrs. Wang's astonished gaze, I closed the door behind me. I looked at the books on the second shelf of the bookcase, then at myself in the mirror, the 17-year-old me. Suddenly, I felt that perhaps, in this second chance at life, the things I could change weren't limited to love and marriage. Maybe I could give a shot to that regret buried deep in my heart, too. Just then, my mom came home from work. David was right behind her. I ran into David downstairs. "He said you left school early because of heat stroke. Why didn't you call me?" My mom came over anxiously, touching my forehead. "How are you feeling now?" "I'm fine," I smiled. "It was just a bit hot." "Don't worry. My mom made some mung bean soup for Willow," David said, putting the pot on the table. "It's good for the heat. Let it cool down before you drink it." She also made some sesame pastries. "That's so kind of her." My mom smiled. She really went out of her way again. "It wasn't any trouble, Auntie." David grinned and looked at me. "If you're feeling better, we can study together tonight." In my last life, David and I often studied together until senior year. Since we lived next door, we discussed problems and did homework together. But this time, I didn't want that. I didn't want to have any relationship with him beyond that of ordinary classmates. I didn't want to get close to his mother, and I certainly didn't want to repeat the tragic ending of my past life. "David," I said softly, "I've been feeling a bit tired lately, so I'd like to study on my own for a while. I'm going to quit the study group and stop our evening study sessions for now." Chapter 6. And just like that, I quit the study group with David and Anna. For the next few days of evening self-study, I studied and did exercises alone. David would habitually come looking for me after class, but usually, I'd already gone with my desk mate to fetch water or to the bathroom before he arrived. When Anna came to ask me questions, I'd usually say I was busy. Finally, on the weekend, David cornered me at my doorstep. "What did Anna and I do to offend you?" he said, visibly upset. "Why are you suddenly ignoring us?" "You're overthinking it. It's almost finals. I just want to focus on studying alone." "I'm overthinking it?" He raised his voice. "The whole class can tell you're avoiding me. Do you think I'm blind or deaf?" I was silent for a moment. "David, do you like me?" "Huh?" He was stunned. "I don't like you," I said. "What?" I said. "Even though we've grown up together, even though we've spent these past 17 years together, I don't have feelings for you beyond those of ordinary friends. Right now, I just want to focus on my studies." "What are you even saying?" He looked like he just heard a funny joke. "Who said I liked you? I only think of you as a childhood friend. That's for the best," I said softly. "Don't flatter yourself," he said, his face darkening. "I was just concerned for a friend. And now you're acting like this, making me out to be the bad guy. As if I like you." "Fine. If you want to study alone, go ahead. From now on, we'll both study on our own." "All right," I nodded. I watched as he walked away, fuming. "I'm sorry, 17-year-old David. I know that right now. At 17, you haven't done anything yet. You're not the cheating scumbag you become later. This cold treatment must seem unfair to you. But I, with the memories of my previous life, can't accept you anymore. And if I already know the unbearable future that awaits us, why not nip everything in the bud? Forgetting each other and moving on is the best ending for us." Chapter 7. Since that day, David never approached me again. Anna, seeing that I ignored her, went to find David. He, seemingly out of spite, loudly declared to Anna, "It's fine. We'll form our own study group. We can still improve our grades. No one is irreplaceable." Indeed, that was true. In this world, no one is truly indispensable. But a few days later, our homeroom teacher, Mr. Zhang, suddenly called me to the office. "Willow, have you been a bit less willing to help your classmates recently?" I frowned. "Mr. Zhang, what do you mean?" "I heard you quit the class study group." I nodded. "Yes. I want to study on my own." Mr. Zhang adjusted his glasses. Let me tell you, you're still young. You need to understand that while doing well academically is important, having good character is equally vital. Selfish behavior is unacceptable. Teacher, I said, puzzled. I just don't think the study group method suits me, and I want to study well. How is that selfish? He sighed and changed the topic. Willow, I was originally planning to recommend you for this year's City 3 Good Student Award. You know what 3 goods means, right? It means not only good academic performance but also good character. Mr. Zhang, I interrupted. First, last year I was elected for the City 3 Goods Award through a fair, public vote. First within the class and then across the school. This year, I don't mind doing the same. Second, I only quit the study group with David and Anna, my desk mate, the students in front and behind me when they ask me questions. I always help them. I don't think there's any issue with my moral character. If I were still 17, I might have been emotionally manipulated by the teacher's words and doubted whether I had done enough. But deep down, I was already 27, someone who had worked her way through the real world. This level of lecturing was just too childish for me. Unable to argue with me, Mr. Zhang had no choice but to send me back to class. But during the afternoon homeroom class, he suddenly announced a seating change. The previous study groups in our class have shown good results. Many students improved in the last monthly test. He said from the podium, the final exams are coming, and for the sake of our class's overall performance, we're implementing a new pair study buddy system. This year's City 3 Good selection focuses primarily on character evaluation. The progress of your desk mates' scores will be an important factor. He called out names, reassigning seats, and Anna was assigned as my desk mate. Willow, Anna hugged her books, seemingly trying hard to be considerate. Don't worry, I'll work hard to improve my grades so you can still be a 3 good student. I suddenly found it ridiculous. The dancing teacher on the podium, his new watch on his wrist, was glaringly obvious. Anna's family, if I remembered correctly, ran a luxury watch business. Suddenly, it all made sense. In my previous life, the homeroom teacher didn't intervene because I was always helping Anna proactively. Under my tutoring, her grades improved by leaps and bounds. By senior year, she was even in the top 100 in the grade. With her weak foundation, I was probably the only one patient enough to help her to that extent. Other students wouldn't bother wasting their precious time on her. Even David, when the 3 of us studied together, it was mostly me and him discussing problems. He seldom helped Anna. When I first quit the study group, Anna tried her best to hide it, but I could tell she was happy. But soon after, she must have realized that David didn't have much patience for her either. And I, the best and cheapest helper, suddenly refused to help, though she didn't know why. She got anxious. Her transfer to this school, her placement in this class, they were all arranged by her family. Using a luxury watch to buy off Mr. Zhang was no difficult feat. They wanted to use the 3 Goods Award to bind me, to keep me as her free tutor. What a clever calculation. After class, I went to find Mr. Zhang in the office. I don't want to sit with Anna. Please change my seat. Chapter 8. Mr. Zhang immediately got angry. Willow, what's wrong with you? Huh? Didn't you just tell me confidently that you're willing to help your desk mate? Now you want to change seats? You refuse to cooperate with the study group. And now you want to change seats too? Do you think you're special in this class? Teacher, do you love everyone in the world equally? What? He was stunned. People always have those they like and those they dislike. I can help my desk mate, but I don't like Anna, so I don't want to help her. Helping others shouldn't be selective. This seating arrangement was based on everyone's scores, and it's tied to the 3 Good selection. If you switch seats, is that fair to others? Why do you only think of yourself? Ha! I let out a cold laugh. 3 goods. 3 goods. Then I withdraw from the 3 Good selection. What? I said I withdraw from the 3 Good selection. You don't need to assign me a new desk mate either. I'll sit alone. Isolated. Selfish. He was trembling with rage. I'm doing this for your own good. If you don't make up for your moral shortcomings now, you'll suffer in society later. I'm teaching you how to be a decent person. Thank you for your good intentions, teacher. but I know how to live my life. The first rule is to not compromise myself for the sake of others' opinions. This is just an excuse for your selfishness. As student council president, shouldn't you lead by example? Shouldn't you have collective awareness? If Anna's grades improve, our class might win outstanding class this year. That's our collective honor. Do you think you deserve your classmates' votes? Teacher, I smiled. Compulsory education only goes up to the 9th grade. I'm paying tuition for high school, which means I'm here to study, not to work for free. Whether the weaker students in this class improve or whether the class wins outstanding class is not my responsibility, it's yours. Whether I'm qualified as the student council president is for the faculty to judge. If you want me to take on extra responsibilities, it's best to contact my parents first to discuss how much I should be compensated. If the pay is reasonable, I don't mind helping. You're so young, yet so profit-oriented. He pointed his finger at me. Don't think that just because you're doing well now, you're invincible. Let me tell you, many girls peak before senior year and then fall behind. Teacher, your words aren't quite right. A new voice sounded from the door. I turned around to see a boy holding a basketball, leaning lazily against the door frame. He spun the basketball in his hand. For the past 5 years, 3 of the top scorers in our school were girls. As a teacher, it's not appropriate to speak without evidence, is it? George, you're from the humanities class. What does this have to do with you? Mr. Zhang was furious. So this was George, forever the top student in the humanities class, rumored to be the most likely candidate to become the city's top scorer. Didn't Mr. Zhang just say that moral character is important for students? George shrugged and walked in. I was simply moved by the teacher's words and decided to step in when I saw this young lady being bullied. Mr. Zhang was left speechless, his face turning as red as a pig's liver. George was known for his sharp tongue and rebellious attitude. Even his own homeroom teacher couldn't control him. And Mr. Zhang clearly couldn't either. Suddenly, Mr. Zhang clutched his chest and pointed back at me. I work myself to the bone for you students. And you won't rest until you've driven me to an early grave. Don't worry, Mr. Zhang, I said calmly. You won't have to deal with me for much longer. I've already decided I'll transfer to the humanities class for senior year. Chapter 9. Upon hearing this, both Mr. Zhang and George were stunned. Mr. Zhang sneered. Ha! Who are you trying to spite? I've never heard of anyone switching from sciences to humanities in senior year. George also looked at me curiously. I'm not joking, I said, looking at Mr. Zhang. In a few days, I'll have my parents come in to sign the paperwork. You think you're a genius, switching to sciences or humanities whenever you feel like it. I ignored him and turned to leave the office. As I walked out, I could still hear Mr. Zhang's mocking voice. If she really switches to humanities, I'll write my surname backward. Back in the classroom, I moved my desk and chair to the last row. Anna watched me move my things, then looked at David with teary eyes, as if I'd bullied her. Most of the classmates just watched silently, but David came over. What are you doing? He frowned. Isn't it obvious? Moving my seat. Did the teacher approve this? I informed him. He watched me pack up and took a deep breath. Come outside with me. I followed him into the hallway. Don't take out your anger on Anna just because we argued. That's really low. I smiled. Taking out my anger? Aren't you avoiding Anna just because I've been spending time with her? But Willow, you're the one who said we should just be regular classmates. We are regular classmates. I just want to study in peace. David, I have no feelings for you. I just find Anna annoying and don't want to waste my time helping her. That's all. I turned to go back to the classroom, but David grabbed my arm. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting so selfish? Let go. I frowned. Fine. I surrender. Just stop acting like this, okay? What? He bit his lip. I'll admit it, I've been spending time with her, walking to and from school together, just to make you jealous. But you can't react like this. He muttered under his breath. You really should learn from Anna. Look how gentle she is. Always thinking of others. Your temper, only I put up with it. I looked at him quietly. Indeed, whether in the previous life or this one, whether at 17 or 27, David was still David. Anna's gentle demeanor, Her constant concessions and attempts to please, they were always what David wanted. And I lived in his self-righteous love and constant comparisons. Like a top that couldn't stop spinning if I didn't spin well enough or fast enough. Or to his satisfaction, he'd instinctively compare me to Anna, pointing at her and saying, "Look how beautifully she spins, and yet I give my love to you, and you still nitpick and fail to appreciate it." But that kind of love, I never wanted it. "David," I said softly, "I've always wondered, in the beginning. It was because I took the initiative to help Anna. So I felt a bit responsible for you." "What?" He didn't understand. I shook my head. "A piece of advice: focus on your studies in senior year. Do more practice tests. Manage your anxiety. You can get into a good university." With that, I turned and went back to the classroom. That's all I can do to help him. What happens next is up to him. Chapter 10. When I got home, Mrs. Wang was sitting on the couch, and my mom was on the phone. "Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Zhang. I'm really sorry for the trouble." Yes. I understand. It must have been an impulsive decision. Please don't rush to report it to the school." "Yes. Thank you." After hanging up, my mom looked conflicted. "Your homeroom teacher said you want to switch to the humanities class?" I nodded. "What? Switch to humanities?" Mrs. Wang immediately cut in. "Listen to Auntie. You can't switch now, senior year is about to start. Mr. Zhang said you talked back to him today, and even insisted on sitting alone. Is something bothering you lately?" my mom asked. I shook my head. "Mom, I want to study humanities and apply for Beijing University's journalism program." "Beijing University?" Mrs. Wang interjected again. "Oh, Beijing University is really hard to get into. Willow, let Auntie tell you. Girls shouldn't get into journalism, it's dangerous and doesn't pay well. Girls should study something like accounting. It's easier to find a stable job. I was just telling your mom that the accounting programs at our local 985 universities are pretty good. Besides, Beijing is so far away. Girls should stay close to home. You and David could both go to local universities and come home on weekends." In my previous life, Mrs. Wang had said the same things repeatedly to me and my parents, how staying local was the best choice. David had told me long ago that his mom wanted him to go to a local university because of her bad leg and reluctance to travel far. As the supposed known and trustworthy future daughter-in-law, it was certainly the safest choice for me to stay local too. Maybe back then, it wasn't just love clouding my judgment. Those words, repeated year after year, hypnotized me into choosing accounting at a local university. "You're the only daughter in the family. It's better to stay close to your parents. You've known David since childhood. No man in this world will treat you better than he will. Get married as soon as you graduate. Willow, girls don't need to be too career-oriented. Stability is most important. You need to think of the family. It's better for girls to have children early. It's easier for your body to recover." It was because of these constant messages that I chose an ordinary, stable job after graduation, married David, and even doubted myself for not being able to conceive. After 5 years of not getting pregnant, Mrs. Wang's attitude toward me soured, and I once overheard her telling David, "Son, even though you're married, you don't have to hang yourself on just one tree. We should have done a premarital medical exam." Who knew she couldn't have kids? "Mom, it's not necessarily Willow's problem, it could be mine." "How could it be your problem?" She raised her voice. "Let me tell you, Willow's been spoiled by you since childhood, whatever she wanted. She got. Now I look at Anna, and I think she's much better. She's always bringing things over, and she's much kinder than Willow. It's not like you can't get divorced these days. You and Willow fight all the time. Just give Anna a try, if she gets pregnant. Leave Willow and be with Anna." As these memories flooded my mind, Mrs. Wang continued bombarding my mom with her values. "Most people in this world are ordinary. You can't aim too high. Girls should seek stability. Find a reliable family to marry into. Graduate. And have kids early. There's an old saying, doing well in life isn't as good as marrying well." "Aunt Wang," I interrupted her. "It's true that most people are ordinary, but ordinary people have dreams too. Dreams aren't about aiming too high. A woman's value isn't solely in getting married and having children. If you read books, you'd see how important a role women have played in pushing history forward. Not everyone can make history. You young people have been brainwashed by all those foreign decadent ideas online, thinking you're something special. She turned to my mom, Willow's mom. I've told you before, you need to watch out for the changes in your daughter's thinking once she's brainwashed. It's scary. I sneered. Aunt Wong, is it the internet brainwashing me? Or is it you trying to brainwash my whole family? What are you saying, child? Her expression changed suddenly. You come to my house whenever you have nothing else to do. Telling my mom that girls shouldn't marry far from home, shouldn't be ambitious, should marry young. Do you really want to control my life that much? You're an ungrateful child. I've watched you grow up. Isn't this concern? I'm busy too. You know, if you were just some stranger on the street, why would I care about you? Since you're so busy, then please focus on your own matters and stop coming to my house. I spoke coldly. Mrs. Wong opened her mouth, staring at me, unable to say anything for a moment. Fine. I'll leave. I'll never come to your house again. She got up, but her movements were slow, clearly waiting for my mom to urge her to stay. But I got there first, grabbing my mom's hand. Thank you, Aunt Wong. Indeed. I'm about to enter senior year and would like a quiet study environment. Mrs. Wong's face turned blue, then white. Before leaving, she paused at the door and turned to my mom with resentment. Willow's mom, you really need to get your daughter under control. Chapter 11. After Mrs. Wong left, my mom sighed. Why were you so angry today? My parents had always been open-minded and kind, but even kind people can be easily influenced. Their ears soft to constant pressure. I pulled my mom into my room, pointing at the row of books on journalism on my shelf. Mom, you know I've been interested in journalism for a long time. The college entrance exam may not be the only opportunity to change the course of my life, but it's a very important choice. In the past, I just followed the crowd. Everyone said science had more career options and better prospects, so I chose it. But personally, I liked the humanities better. Mom, I've made this decision after careful consideration. While classes in sophomore year focused on science, I still studied the humanities subjects for the proficiency exams. I haven't fallen behind. I believe I can use the summer before senior year to catch up on the humanities content. I really want to transfer to the humanities class and chase my dream to take a shot at Beijing University. It may be a risky decision, but I'm willing to fight for it with everything I have. My mom looked at me silently for a while, then patted my shoulder. All right, when your dad comes home tonight, we'll talk it over. I hugged her tightly. Thank you, Mom. That night, I talked with my parents for a long time. The next day, my mom took me to Mr. Zhang to sign the paperwork. Students make trouble, and parents go along with it. Ridiculous. He sneered as he watched my mom sign. Mr. Zhang, my mom smiled. As parents, we believe we should support our child's decisions and have faith in her, rather than discourage her. Walking out of the office, I felt both happy and relieved. I might not necessarily succeed in the end, but I had supportive parents, and I made the choice I truly wanted. Chapter 12. On the first day of senior year, I ran into George at the door of Humanities Class 1. Didn't think you'd actually come. He raised an eyebrow. Welcome, David. On the other hand, was furious when he found out I'd switched to the Humanities class. Why didn't you discuss it with me first? After a moment of silence, I said, David, this was my personal decision. Besides my parents, I don't need to discuss it with anyone. Fine. He sneered. Then we're done. On the first day of school, we had a diagnostic test, perhaps to increase the pressure. The questions were rather difficult. A week later, the results were announced. I ranked 11th in the humanities class. The entire senior year office was in an uproar. When homeroom teacher Sue called me to the office, I happened to hear Mr. Zhang ranting inside. She just transferred. There's no way she could score that high in humanities. This girl's got too much pride. She must have cheated to save face. We must investigate thoroughly. I knocked on the door, and the voices inside fell silent. Upon seeing me, Teacher Sue smiled and waved me over. Willow, you did well on the diagnostic test. I just wanted to ask, How did you improve your humanities scores so quickly in such a short time? Humph. Mr. Zhang sneered from the side. I paused, then said seriously, Teacher Su, is someone suspecting me of cheating? Teacher Su hesitated. Well, to be honest, you just transferred from the sciences class, and ranking 11th in the grade right away, the teachers are, understandably, curious. I smiled. Teacher Su, do you know how I spent my sophomore summer break? I locked myself at home the entire summer. Without any entertainment, I bought review materials and past exam papers for the humanities and studied point by point, question by question, from 8 in the morning until midnight every day. I understand the curiosity, but I can't accept baseless accusations of cheating. Baseless? Extraordinary claims require evidence. Do you have proof you didn't cheat? Mr. Zhang retorted immediately. There were proctors and surveillance cameras in the exam room. Mr. Zhang, why don't you ask the proctors or check the footage instead of questioning me based on an assumption that I cheated? You see, Teacher Su? Look at her attitude. She never accepts authority. Mr. Zhang was agitated. She's been spoiled by her position as a student leader, so arrogant. You must call her parents. Unexpectedly, Teacher Su ignored him. Willow, I believe in you. Keep up the good work. Mr. Zhang's eyes widened. No. Teacher Su, you're young, you don't understand how cunning students can be. You shouldn't compromise integrity just to boost humanities class 1's performance or for your own promotion. Mr. Zhang, speaking of integrity, George, who had been helping Teacher Su sort some documents, suddenly spoke up. Didn't you forget something? What? Mr. Zhang was confused. George looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. That day in the office, you said if Willow transferred to the humanities class, you'd write your surname backward. Have you started writing your name backward lately? The other teachers in the office struggled to hold back their laughter. One of them couldn't help but burst out. Mr. Zhang. Teacher Su also smiled. I think you'd better stay out of our humanities class matters. A minute later, George and I walked out of the office one after the other. Willow! I turned around. You seem like quite an interesting person. He had his hands in his pockets. I've always thought school was pretty boring, no real competition. But honestly, now I'm a bit excited. Excited about what? I asked, puzzled. He smiled. Excited to meet you at the top someday. Chapter 13. After that, my days were filled with nothing but studying. Sometimes, news from the science class would reach me, like how Anna was aggressively pursuing David. Perhaps my departure had prompted her to act earlier than in the previous life. But this time, things were different. In the past, my presence had made Anna seem like a warm escape for David from our marriage. Now, with me gone, Anna, the problem student, pursuing David so fervently only made him feel embarrassed. He had neither the time nor the patience to help her improve her grades. And in the high-pressure environment of senior year, love and warmth from the opposite sex were unnecessary luxuries. Anna became the laughingstock of the whole grade again, but I didn't expect that she'd take out her anger on me for David's indifference. For the past 2 weeks, the girls sitting to my left had been chatting loudly whenever I studied. They were the same girls who used to bully Anna. Now, they seemed to have found a new target, me. I once saw Anna walking with them after school, whispering together. Each of them now wore an elegant lady's watch on their wrist, and during one recess, those girls, perhaps on someone's orders, cornered me in a bathroom stall and dumped a bucket of cold water over me, soaking me from head to toe. Justice will be served, sooner or later. One of them laughed. I stood silently in the stall, waited until the door was opened from the outside, borrowed a towel, and used the janitor's heater to dry my clothes. Then I went back to the bathroom sink, picked up a bucket, and filled it to the brim with water. When I walked back into the classroom with the bucket, those girls were chatting and laughing. I walked over, lifted the bucket, and poured the entire thing over them. "Ah!" they screamed. "Is this all you've got?" I smiled. "I'm truly sorry. I'm the kind of person who repays even a drop of kindness with a flood." "You lunatic!" they yelled. "We're going to report you to the teacher." "I'm the one who should be reporting you," I said coldly. "It's senior year, and you're still playing childish bullying games. Why don't you just leave?" One of the girls shouted. "I want to mess with you." I can't stand you. You're not the student council president anymore. So don't act like you're above us. We're not scared of you. The whole grade knows you're a shameless cheater. So why act all high and mighty? So noisy. A voice suddenly came from the back of the classroom. The entire class fell silent. George lazily stood up, walked over, and asked, "You don't want her sitting here?" One of the girls, wiping water off her forehead, replied, "Yeah, she bullies us. And George, you know she's a cheater, right? We don't want to sit with someone of poor character." After she finished, they all had smug looks on their faces. Oh, George nodded, then turned to me. "Actually, I also think your study environment here isn't great. Birds of a feather flock together. After all, there's no need to prove that you're pure despite the mud during such an important year as senior year. Want to be my desk mate?" What? I was stunned, and so were the other girls. On my first day in this class, I had heard about George. He was handsome, brilliant, and sharp-tongued. Many girls had tried to be his desk mate, hoping to get close to him by asking questions, but it usually didn't take long for his harsh words to make them cry. Over time, no one dared approach him, and his desk remained empty. This was probably the first time the top student had ever taken the initiative to invite someone to sit with him. Anyone who refused would be a fool. Sure, I nodded. Let's go. He picked up my bag, and the two of us, under the watchful eyes of the entire class, moved my seat next to his. Chapter 14. Of course, knowing Anna and those girls, they wouldn't just let this go. To avoid any more trouble during such a critical time, I was considering asking my dad to pick me up after evening self-study, when George suddenly spoke up. "I saw your address while helping teacher Sue organize some documents. You live on Feng Street. No, 15, right?" I nodded. "I live just one street behind you. Evening self-study will run until 9 starting next week. Want to walk home together?" That would be perfect. Also, you were 11th in the last monthly exam, right? 11th place won't get you into Beijing University. He tossed me a notebook full of mistakes. "I don't need these questions anymore. If you want, you can use them for reference." Just then, the bell signaling the end of self-study rang. He got up, picked up his basketball, and headed out. "George." He turned around. "I heard you usually don't care much about others." "Yeah, but you're not others now." He spoke lazily. "What?" He gave a faint smile. "Looking forward to working with you, desk mate." Chapter 15. A top student's notebook of mistakes is more valuable than any review material. For the next month, I studied even harder, summarizing problem-solving approaches and methods. In the first monthly exam of senior year, I jumped to 8th place in the grade. The rumors about me cheating on the diagnostic exam died down, and my relationship with George grew closer. The citywide evaluations came out this year. Although Science Class 1 hadn't nominated me for 3 Good Student, the Student Affairs Office nominated me for Outstanding Student Leader, and I received the honor as expected. I heard that when the results came out, Mr. Zhang smashed his Outstanding Teacher mug in the office. After the National Day holiday, the school held its fall sports meet. On my way to fetch water, I saw Mr. Zhang and Anna sneakily meeting a man behind the teaching building. I thought for a moment, then snuck into an empty classroom on the first floor, crouched below the window, and pressed the record button on my phone. "Mr. Zhang, with Anna's current grades, it's hard for her to get into a good university in China. About what we discussed before, can you inflate her regular scores a bit? It'll help her applications to schools abroad look better." Understood. It's too difficult to manipulate the college entrance exam now, but I can still help with her regular scores. Thank you so much. The private tutors we've hired haven't been effective. It'd be best if you could arrange for a few good students to tutor her. If her college entrance exam scores could improve, that would be ideal. The previous one, that Willow girl, was too disobedient. Forget about her. I've already sent her to the humanities class. I'll pick another candidate. That girl always made my daughter unhappy. Don't worry, I'll find another opportunity to give her some trouble, maybe even a demerit. It's no big deal. Great. Here, take this watch. Oh, I couldn't possibly. Mr. Han, you're too generous. It's nothing, really. after their footsteps faded into the distance. My palms were sweaty as I stood up. Just as I reached the classroom door, a voice spoke up, eavesdropping so blatantly, "Aren't you worried someone might see you?" I jumped, my hair standing on end. I looked up to see George. "You scared me. What are you doing here?" I stared at him. "What about you?" He chuckled. "If you want to be an investigative journalist, at least learn the basics. You didn't even close the door. Were you hoping passersby wouldn't notice you crouching by the wall?" Huh? I blinked. "So, did anyone see?" "Idiot. Of course not." He crossed his arms. "I've been standing guard here the whole time." Chapter 16. The next day. Before the entire school did morning exercises, the broadcasting station suddenly played a strange recording. The stars of the recording were Mr. Zhang, the homeroom teacher of Senior Science Class 1, and Anna's parent, George, head of the broadcasting station, said it was a live broadcast accident. A mysterious voice recorder was delivered to us. He shrugged. "I just wanted to listen to it with everyone who knew the mic was still on." Mr. Zhang was suspended, and all his awards and recognitions were revoked. The recording spread quickly, as some students recorded it and uploaded it online. In less than an hour, it went viral. The ever-resourceful netizens turned into detectives. Not only did former students of Mr. Zhang come forward to accuse him of favoritism towards wealthy students, but Anna's family background was also thoroughly exposed. "Isn't this the family that sells fake watches? I bought a watch from them too. They said it was second-hand, but it was fake." Someone reported the Han family's company, and the police got involved. It turned out the Han family was not only selling fake products but also involved in money laundering. The school began investigating whether Anna was involved in organizing a bullying group. When they questioned those girls, they tearfully confessed that Anna had given them watches and told them to bully me. Anna became a pariah at school and soon dropped out. The saddest part was Mr. Zhang. The watch he admired on his wrist every day turned out to be fake as well. Chapter 17. The day after Anna dropped out, I saw David at the entrance of my apartment building. He apologized to me. "I didn't know she was so malicious, always targeting you." I actually started to dislike her later, he said, wringing his hands nervously. "I'm sorry. Willow, can we reconcile, please?" As he spoke, he held out a bottle of strawberry milk, my favorite drink from before. But as I looked at that bottle, I suddenly remembered the previous life. I had returned home early from a business trip, only to see that the strawberry milk that should have been in the fridge was on the table, with a lipstick mark lingering on the rim. The bedroom and bathroom were filled with unspeakable smells, and it was clear that in their rush to get to work, neither of them had bothered to clean up after their enjoyment. Since my rebirth, I hadn't touched strawberry milk. Nausea overwhelmed me, and I turned away, unable to control the urge to vomit. David was startled and quickly tried to pat my back, but I stopped him. "Sorry," I said, trying to steady myself. "I don't like this milk anymore." "Then, I'll get you something else," he stammered. I shook my head. It couldn't be changed, and it couldn't go back. "David," I forced a smile, "let's not see each other for now. I wish you all the best in the college entrance exams." "Is it because of George?" he suddenly asked. "What? You like George. That's why you followed him to the humanities class. You sit together. You walk home together, isn't that it?" He raised his voice. "David, George and I are just classmates. I've told you, I just want to focus on my studies." Ha! He let out a bitter laugh. The childhood friend loses to the newcomer, right? He threw the strawberry milk aside. "I never thought you'd be this kind of person. Many girls like George. He won't be a good choice." His face darkened. "Willow, if you don't choose me, one day you'll regret it." Chapter 18. After that, whenever David saw me, it was as if I were a stranger. He seemed determined, throwing himself completely into his studies. His monthly exam scores improved each time, and Mrs. Wang took every opportunity to boast in the neighborhood. With these grades, he could easily get into any 985 university in the country. By the end of the first semester, I had secured the second rank in the grade. The second semester passed quickly to the first, second, and third mock exams, and May turned into June, and it was time for the college entrance exams. I felt I had done well, and after the exams, I compared answers with George. We both had a rough idea of our scores. We should both be able to get into Beijing University without any problems. When the results were released, it turned out to be true. George was the top scorer in the city, and I ranked 8th. Both of us received calls from several universities, offering us opportunities. I applied for journalism at Beijing University, while George chose history. I heard David did well too. He got into the best local 985 university, a significant improvement over the school he had attended in the previous life. But I also heard that after the exams, David fell ill, and Mrs. Wang handled his college applications on her own. Coincidentally, David and I had our graduation banquets at the same hotel on the same day. David and Mrs. Wang stood at the entrance of the banquet hall opposite ours. Mrs. Wang was beaming, but David hadn't even shaved and looked listless. Choosing a major is more important than choosing a school. I carefully selected David's major, finance, so he can make big money in the future, Mrs. Wang said, glancing pointedly at us. Unlike those two from their school who got into Beijing University, studying journalism and history. Sure, the school is the best in the country, but they'll be jobless in the future. My mom was about to confront her, but I quickly held her back. What's with her? I've been friends with her for so many years. Beijing University isn't something just any school can compare to. Don't stoop to her level, I said, patting my mom's back to calm her. Let me tell you, girls will be lining up to marry David in the future. I'm already worrying about how to choose a daughter-in-law, Mrs. Wang continued, excitedly. She tugged at David. David, didn't I tell you to bring your acceptance letter? Show it to your aunts. David shook his head, his eyes suddenly meeting mine across the distance. For some reason, his eyes were filled with sadness. Why are you shaking your head? Mrs. Wang grabbed David's bag, but in her haste, she dropped it, and its contents spilled out. An elderly woman enthusiastically helped pick up the scattered items. Oh, is this the acceptance letter? What's this? A diagnosis of azoospermia? This. Huh? Several people gathered around, one covering her mouth in shock. David, you can't have children? That'll make it hard to find a wife. What nonsense are you talking about? Mrs. Wang snatched the medical report. This. She turned to David in disbelief. David, what is this? When did you get this test done? Oh, it's just a misunderstanding. Kids make fake reports all the time, she quickly explained to the others. It's not fake. David suddenly spoke. I do have azoospermia. I can't have children. What are you talking about? Mrs. Wang slapped his back in anger. Get inside now. David gave a self-deprecating smile. Despite Mrs. Wang's shouting, he walked away without looking back. Chapter 19. Suddenly, I realized something. David! I ran after him. He turned around, his eyes brimming with tears, his voice hoarse. Willow, you've remembered everything from the previous life, haven't you? I said calmly. He didn't answer, but instead rushed forward and hugged me tightly. I had a long dream. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he spoke incoherently. In the dream, I betrayed you. I thought she and I had a child, but it wasn't mine. You were pushed down the stairs by her, and I didn't save you first. Later, I found out the child wasn't mine. And when we fought, she picked up scissors and stabbed me. So that was it. In the previous life, David had never gotten tested, but I had. The results showed I had no fertility issues. But before I could tell David, I discovered he was cheating on me with Anna. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Willow, but it was just a dream, right? He sobbed. I would never treat you like that. I would never do that to you. We still have a chance. We still have time to make things right. This time, let's be together, okay? Please? I gently pushed him away. David, you and I both know that wasn't just a casual dream. The blood was real. The pain was real. Every bit of it was pain that I truly experienced. If you were still the David who knew nothing and remembered nothing, maybe we could still be ordinary classmates. Even friends. But now that you remember, we can't even be that. I don't want to carry the hatred from the previous life into this one. Strangers, that's my final boundary. I hope in this life, you become a better person. I may be cold-blooded, But I don't pity him. If he truly could have children, if that child had been his, in the last life he probably would have been happy with Anna. Never hope that your suffering or even your life will earn a man's regret, because that belated pity and remorse are worthless in the face of an unknown, beautiful life. Chapter 20. That night, Mrs. Wong cried and made a scene at home for hours. The entire building could hear her. At 9 o'clock, a small stone suddenly hit my bedroom window. When I opened it and looked down, I saw George. He was standing under the street lamp, holding a small bouquet, looking like a prince straight out of a fairy tale. I quickly changed clothes and went downstairs. Why didn't you send a message? What era is this? And you're still throwing stones to get someone's attention? I laughed. Just wanted to try it. See if you'd hear it. He shrugged. We exchanged smiles. I'm leaving for a trip with my parents tomorrow, so the next time we see each other will probably be at Beijing University. I nodded. The flowers are. He cleared his throat. These flowers are called Alstroemeria. I happened to see them at a flower shop while passing by, and I thought the meaning was quite fitting for you, so I bought them. He handed me the bouquet. I don't think I've properly congratulated you on getting into Beijing University. Same to you, I smiled, taking the flowers. Well, better head back up. See you at Beijing University. See you at Beijing University. As I watched George walk away, I suddenly remembered what he'd said. He said the meaning of the Alstroemeria suited me, but he hadn't said what it was. I pulled out my phone and looked it up. The answer quickly appeared. The meaning of Alstroemeria: friendship, hope for reunion, and new beginnings. Chapter 21. In September, I reported to the journalism department at Beijing University. An old professor gave us our first lecture. If any of you are here to make big money, it's not too late to apply for a transfer, he said with a smile. As journalists, you must always remember your social responsibility. Studying journalism meant mastering a wide range of skills: interviewing, writing, layout design, video production. I was busier than ever, and George was equally occupied. He was still a prominent figure at the school, standing out even at a talent-filled place like Beijing University. Some girls in my class found out that George and I were high school classmates and asked if I could introduce them to him. Excitedly, I asked George, but he flatly refused. Why don't you want to meet them? That girl is really nice. I just don't want to. A lot of girls are asking what kind of girlfriend you'd want. Without looking up, he replied, I don't want one. Why not? I was puzzled. You haven't gotten one either. He said, that's because I'm too busy. Same here, he said, closing his book. I'm busy too. And so it went until our senior year. George never got a girlfriend. Some girls began to suspect his orientation, subtly asking me if he might like men. I thought about it. Probably not. Then he must like you, they said. Really? We've never seen George get close to any other girl but you. After graduating, I received an offer for a master's program in journalism from a prestigious overseas university, while George stayed on for direct admission to the doctoral program at Beijing University. On the day I left for Beijing, George came to the airport to see me off. As we were about to part, a strong emotion suddenly welled up inside me. I actually knew. Being busy with school, not having time for a relationship, those were just excuses. I was just too hurt from my past life, too scared to take that step again. But what if? What if it was this person standing in front of me? Could I try? I pinched my palm, then suddenly looked up. George. I stared into his beautiful eyes, speaking each word clearly. Do you like me? He was stunned, then smiled. Willow, do you know why TV dramas can last 100 episodes? Huh? Because they never say what they mean. If you're this straightforward, what's left for the story? Stop talking nonsense. I was anxious. Do you like me or not? If not, forget it. Hey, why are you mad? He laughed, pulling me closer. I just thought it was a pity. Actually, I bought a ticket for the next flight. I was planning to surprise you once I got there. Huh? What did he just say? I've been waiting for the day you'd want to be in a relationship. Then he took out a beautifully pressed Alstroemeria bookmark. At the same time, I heard that deep, magnetic voice. He said, "I love you." Chapter 22. George and I had a long-distance relationship for 3 years. 3 years later, I returned to China and became a social news reporter. 2 years later, George completed his doctorate and stayed on to teach at the university. Less than 2 years later, he was promoted to associate professor. I stayed true to the values of journalism, approached every story with a commitment to the truth, and thrived in the career I loved, earning several industry honors. George, meanwhile, became a guest on a historical TV program. With his eloquence and wit, he gained popularity online as History George and was recognized as a rising star at Beijing University. Back when I transferred to the humanities class, he had said he looked forward to meeting me at the top. Years later, we both stood at the peaks of our respective fields, constantly looking out, exploring one summit after another. Another year passed, and we got married. It was the college entrance exam season again when our high school alma mater invited the two of us back to give a talk. Coincidentally, while I was waiting by the roadside for George to buy water, I ran into David. He was holding a child's hand. When he saw me, he walked over. "I always see you on TV, on the internet." He smiled. "You must be doing really well these past few years." I nodded. "I've been teaching in the mountains these past few years. This is my adopted child," he said. After a brief chat, he left with the child. Just then, George returned. He squinted at the figure in the distance. "David? What did he want? Did he come to see you?" I burst into laughter. "We just ran into each other. Why is Professor Liu getting jealous over such an old story?" He snorted softly. "Oh, right." I tugged on his sleeve. "I remember you once bought me a bouquet of Alstroemeria. Was it from that flower shop over there?" He looked at me, muttering quietly. "I always said you were slow. And you really are. Do you think a small shop like that would sell such a rare flower?" "Huh? I bought it online. Searched several shops. It was really hard to find." I blinked. "Wow, George, could it be that you secretly liked me back then?" To my surprise, he actually blushed, gripping my hand tightly. "Let's go, or we'll be late." How amusing. Now that we were married, he blushed more easily. So unlike the aloof and untouchable Professor Liu at the university. When we returned to the school, I found out that all these years, I'd been something of a legend at my high school alma mater. After the talk, the school asked us to write a message for this year's examinees. I thought for a moment and wrote down these words. "Because of passion, there is enthusiasm. Believe in yourself, and look forward to meeting at the top."